Welcome to BeEngaged. This is where we unite brilliant minds to elevate space technology and innovation in many other industries, hear about unique skills and perspectives that drive us forward, all with a focus on empowering peace and uniting people. So that's the little intro. I don't know, that might change later on. This is where we're going so far with episode 1. So today, I am thrilled to introduce some of my friends and colleagues. We are discussing the coolest thing that's happened, I don't know, maybe ever. AI in space is here, just after the historic milestone of deploying the first large language model, LLM, aboard a space vehicle, International Space Station. So in this inaugural series, I'm excited to introduce to you a group of extraordinary friends. Colin Perran. Ferran, Shane Morris, Aaron Ryan. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, are you guys ready for this?
I've never been more ready.
You've never been more
so ready.
Do you know the person that put the LLM in space? Is that someone you know?
I don't know.
Might be.
Must have been Aaron.
Might be Colin.
He's the astrophysicist.
I thought you were a heliophysicist. You're an astrophysicist?
Well, I'm astro and planetary.
Okay.
I deal with rocks in space, in
Rocks.
addition to black holes in space.
All right, so we'll start it off with a fun fact. Okay, so this is the fun fact. So NASA, I know that you guys all know this, but let's just keep this as the fun fact for the audience here. So NASA plans to establish the first long-term human presence on the moon, including building the lunar gateway orbiting the moon as a starting and staging point for deeper space exploration. I find that very interesting too. So the Artemis, it's not just American effort, it's global. So NASA is working with international partners, including European Space Station, Japan, Canada, to bring together expertise and resources for this huge, ambitious goal. So, I don't know, lunar habitats and advanced propulsion systems and, pave the way for more human exploration on Mars, I think is super cool. So that's my fun fact for the day. I'm sure, Aaron, do you have?
Yeah, and the one thing with also sort of lunar gateway is that we're going to wind up having laser communications between spacecraft and Earth. And so that's going to increase the amount of data we can get back. So once we switch to using laser for communications, the people who are on the moon can actually watch Netflix live.
Whoa.
And just stream.
There's got to be the 3D printer situation going on up there.
I think they had a 3D printer that they were testing on the International Space Station, but there definitely have been some tests with lunar regolith simulant to try and 3D print.
I got a cool space fact.
Okay, go for it.
So one of the things that I found out this week is that NASA's human spaceflight program is actually running it's kind of like what Blockbuster used to do. It's like a return optional program. So in conjunction with Boeing, they've decided that returning astronauts from space is going to be optional. So it's like when I used to check out movies from Blockbuster, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to bring this movie back. That's how we're doing the astronauts. Now we're just going to leave them there to hang out. There's going to be a late fee program where if you're like late, it's like $3.95 a day to keep an astronaut in space. It's a pretty bold choice, but I'm really proud of Pam Melroy for instituting that. Not everybody could do that.
All right, so Colin, you're the main man right now. So you put the LLM in space on the International Space Station. Just tell us what's going on. How did it start? What's happening here?
Well, I definitely had a dream of just kind of putting something in space. All that said, my background is in AI. I've been building a lot of these large language models as well since 2018 actually. So it's pretty popularity of like before natural language processing was overly popular in industry. At least it was popular in other places, but it's definitely I thought it would be an interesting challenge to really go for it, right? Go for trying to put generative AI, especially generative AI, in space. Space has its own unique challenges, so that's really what I was hoping for.
Yeah, so I was thinking data transmission, processing delays, distance from here, like from Earth.
Yep.
Like, how did you get across
power.
that? Yeah.
Well, it was beginning with there was already limited compute power, right? And during that time, we were given kind of the upper bound of what we were allowed to have in there. I'm not allowed to necessarily disclose what that upper bound was, but what we did was we really focused on trying to get it as small as possible.
We can actually, like, we can give an estimate, right, of how big it was.
Yeah, I mean,
so, like,
yeah,
Axiom flew up an AWS snow cone in 2022. So that only has 4 gigabytes of memory, but you can put like 14, I think it was 14 gig or so of like actual data on board, but it's just like 2 virtual CPUs and 4 gigabytes of memory. So my desktop that I'm using right now has 32 gigabytes of memory. So it is massively underpowered for what you can do in space.
And Colin, you had a lead up to this too, and I think that's sort of important that you maintain the Python library Vector Lite. And so you were already like a year and a half ago considering compute limited vector databases. Like you were thinking about what you needed to do. So this wasn't like necessarily a new challenge. You'd been thinking about limited compute. So did you, like when you were publishing Vector Lite, did you think I'm going to put this in space, or was it just I'm doing this for compute limited environments?
I was thinking I'm going to do this for compute limited environments. So one of the projects that I'm doing, beyond the company that you're talking about, Shane, is one of my startup called Prophesy. So we've been focused on trying to get portable assistants for a while, right? And we originally created a portable assistant that was focused on logistics, like a logistics problem. It was 2018, nobody cared.
Timing, baby, timing.
Right? Yeah, so it was, the timing was nobody cared. They didn't care that you could talk to your logistics pipeline and predict wear rates. They just wanted to be able to see a dashboard. Now it seems people are warmer to the idea of like, that would be really interesting if I had an AI assistant that I can just talk to. Likewise, when it comes to the astronauts, right, in space, I wanted to give them an assistant where they can kind of respond naturally and didn't have to gear up every single time just to use the thing, right? Mm-hmm. It is effectively the ChatGPT, but in space. I know a lot of people know what ChatGPT is. It's what I threw up there is not ChatGPT. However, it is like that, right? It's, and like I said, in 2018, we were focused on trying to get kind of these portable assistants. Now there are probably multiple portable assistants. Humane, I think, is one of those companies, and I think Rabbit. They have these tiny little devices that are portable, and they hit like the OpenAI API. My company is still very focused on making sure that it is private. So if you wanted your own private assistant, you don't really have to worry that it's going to reach out to the internet and then come back with, something.
Which is important up on the International Space Station. You're like, let's keep this private. So what are they using it for? Have they been using it at all?
Currently, it's in the International Space Station National Lab. So it's purely experimental at the moment, right? That's what it is used for. More experiments, but I think that there are potential future use cases that go beyond just experimental use cases.
Because when you ask something, it uses a lot of resources, and they don't have very many resources. So I'm wondering, is it useful?
Just think about how much fuel that it takes to actually put someone up in space, someone with a different specialty or expertise in space. It's an order of magnitude cheaper to be able to just say, let me upload the expertise you need, right, to that system next to you.
That's true.
And then after that, now the astronauts still have their expertise, but at the very least, if they needed additional expertise kind of on an ongoing basis, we don't have to worry about trying to launch a whole other person up there.
I need to start doing that.
You can understand people get a lot of training before they go up into space, but at some point, like when everything might be going wrong, right?
Yes.
It is not great for you to have to sit there and be like, okay, I got trained on this like 2 years ago. How do I do this thing? It is much easier to be like, you, LLM, you have access to all the documentation. Tell me what to do, please, God.
Exactly. Right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's just, instead of flipping through that like huge manual that they've got up there, or, scroll through whatever PDFs that are
Well,
out.
I think you hit it. It's payload. Like if we can get, I mean, I don't usually list my weight in thumb drives, but I think I weigh like 6,000 thumb drives, and so, it's a payload issue too. If you've got to get something new up there or a specialist, that payload has a weight associated with it. And so, payload alone, what is it right now for, I don't want to bring up Starliner, it's a sore subject, but I think it's, $1,000 a kilogram. So, we're talking about something that's cheap to get in space, cost effective, and probably going to be more efficient. And I think that was the strength of what you built. But the other cool thing, and I was thinking about this, is so much NASA tech ends up back on Earth, right? When we think about Velcro, I mean, I drink Tang every day. I don't know about you guys, but like, yeah. And so I'm thinking about like, okay, what are the compute limited resources where in-memory LLMs would be something where you might need here on Earth, right? I think that NASA's been the proving ground a lot of times for bleeding edge tech. And this is an example of, if it can work for astronauts in a compute limited environment, then we can put it here in compute limited environments, wherever they are. So I think it's valid for a lot of different reasons.
Well, one of the open source projects, and I'm going to put this out there, right? That I am working on is, so my mother-in-law is blind and has dementia. So one of the things that she lost her eyesight when she was in her 30s. One of the things that I felt that a good portable AI assistant could help her with was when she was still trying to walk around like the park by herself, or wanted to it would be nice to be able to have a vision assistant that didn't rely on the internet, right? And it was always there with her. If she just forgot to turn to the left or to the right, like she could, kind of course correct. So it's a matter of really, hopefully, getting people that freedom as long as they can, right?
Well, the wearables,
and that dignity
though,
as long as they can.
That's good for that use, but the wearables that they're advertising now, I'm like, you're going to have all my data all the time, everything. Like, it's scary.
Yeah,
Like,
that's right.
I mean, I get it for the older population. I love that use case. But I'm a little scared to use it at.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the nice thing about having something that's completely local is the data
that's
goes.
the key. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it knows you.
It knows you.
I forgot, we don't have you guys' backgrounds. So let's talk about each other's backgrounds. So this is a group that we all used to work together back in the day, a while ago. But this is just a fun group. And this is why I wanted to get everybody together, is because it's a cool crew. Erin, give us a little bit more of your background.
So I have a PhD in astrophysics and planetary science. I mostly studied black hole binary systems and asteroids and comets when I was doing astronomy. I also supported the NASA Spitzer Space Telescope straight out of college. And I've worked on designing multiple NASA missions to planetary objects.
That's so cool.
I am also just a weirdo, and I like playing with geospatial data.
And you're a pretty good coder. You do a lot of coding.
I will do sorts of things for groups like Habitat for Humanity, where they're looking at trying to add ADUs when zoning laws have changed, and there is the question of where can you do that. I can code up things like that. I've done that before. I'm actually writing code right now just to figure out whether or not I can power my whole house with solar panels.
That's a good use.
So,
Colin, what did you say? You said you were a math major originally? Did I hear that right?
So, educational background, right? Yes, I have an applied mathematics degree, pre-med, and then I did pursue getting into medical school, but it was an engineering and biostatistics professor that convinced me to get into biostatistics instead. That really was the gateway for me to data science. It started
how did we get here?
Biostatistics, and then here we go. We've gone down the statistics pathway and computational statistics, and it kind of veered me off to data science, right? Yeah. But that said, I am fine. I'm pretty happy now with a Maybe
Well, you're
I
doing
will,
all right.
I will revisit kind of the medical space at some point in time, maybe in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a lot. I do have a lot of family that are doctors, nurses, and physicians assistants that are probably pretty upset that the one Filipino that was supposed to be a nurse or a doctor ended up a data scientist. But
Ended
that's
up putting the first LLM in space. I want this in the history books. I want your name, and I want this in the history books. That's what I really want in life. All right, Shane. Other than the grill, I mean, Shane's got the attitude, pizzazz, whatever. What's your background?
Yeah, unlike you guys, I'm a dropout. So I was like, I'm done one day. I ended up being entirely self-taught in coding and engineering. Had a cool early career with it, mostly in the music and entertainment industry. Ended up managing some bands and rappers that are pretty well known. Collected some platinum records that are actually in those boxes behind me. I need to get those up on the wall.
Well, you move.
And ended up, somehow in federal and defense contracting when Colin found me on TikTok, where I'm a tragic TikTok success story. And then by the time this podcast is released, so that'll be midweek, I'm probably assuming midweek next week, I will have my new position where I'm now the CEO of Salute Loans.
Oh.
So
Okay, I didn't know that.
yeah. So that gets announced midweek next week. But because we're recording it today, and this is happening in the future, because I'm a time traveler, as well as having the credentials I just mentioned, it's also time travel. Yeah. So I've been able to transition into that space, and I'm really just enjoying the process. I never saw myself going from this to that, so I just kind of do whatever, which is sick in its own way.
I love it. My background's math for the listeners. So mathematics undergrad, computer science, programming, object-oriented masters, and then my doctorate's in computer science. But I did neural networks. My dissertation was on neural networks with they call them the old taco birds, test and checkout birds, of the old SIBRs and GPS and discus.
I'm like the opposite of that. I don't know anything, but I'm also just dangerous. So you know enough to be dangerous, and I'm just like, I don't know what's going on, but that's dangerous.
So going back to the Artemis and the moon and all that stuff. Well, let's go back to the astronauts. So quick question. The whole space suits and it's not compatible. Who cares? Why are they not bringing spacesuits with them? Say, get into these new spacesuits, we'll bring you back. I don't understand. Why is it this difficult? Why is the spacesuit compatibility? Just freaking bring them new spacesuits that are compatible with.
Some of that is that they're actually sized to the person, right? And
Yeah.
so
Well, they have their sizes. NASA has their sizes.
they do. They should be able to do that. I don't know how quickly they can produce them. Is the issue? I know.
Seems like a
right
pretty
for a while
important-
at least, like those were all being hand sewn.
Yeah, I
Like,
got
by
a
people.
sewing machine. I can jump in. I mean, I can do it.
Wow.
Where are we getting these spacesuits from? AliExpress, where we getting like some odd sizing? I know NASA
don't
usually has
know.
only U.S. based procurement, but we got to check on where. I mean, how hard? I feel like I could make a spacesuit. I've got
I
my
could
grandma's sewing
too.
machine.
I don't understand the issues here. I'm like, this is ridiculous. We can solve this problem. I feel like we should be able to solve this problem.
Is that kind of like an OEM problem? Is it a logistics problem?
I don't know. I
It doesn't
don't
seem
know.
like an engineering problem to me.
No,
Is
it
the
does
reason
not.
why.
No, because they've also had issues just with the suits on the space station themselves, like when they have water leaks and things, where they don't have the parts, and then it just becomes a cascading issue where it's like, yeah, we have this suit, but we can't use it.
So the Artemis mission, Aaron, and with LLMs being on the International Space Station at least, what's next? Is it too late to help the Artemis mission?
Beyond LLMs, I think one of the other things that we can start doing more with spacecraft and then AI models is putting up a lot of computer vision models. So looking back at Earth, right, we have a lot of satellites that are in Earth orbit. They're taking images. They're taking really high resolution images. But then you sort of have the pipeline problem where you need to get the data down, right? And if you're having a natural disaster or something, you want to get that data down fast. Problem is, trying to get images down fast is never easy. What would be better is if you could have computer vision model on board that actually says, hey, these are the buildings that I think have been destroyed in some way. Here's their coordinates and the edges of those buildings. Go check them out. That would be more useful. And even for the moon, right, we actually have a lot of material, so meteorite sort of material that smacks into the moon at any given time. We do have a lot of observations that we're doing from the ground where we look for impact flashes, but that takes a big smash. So what we can do with the orbiters instead is look for things like impact craters. So flag new impact craters and say, okay, we're getting new craters at this rate. We're going through a lot of debris. Like, maybe this section of the moon is not where we want the astronauts to live. That would be a really good use for the computer vision models right now, prepping for Artemis.
Oh.
Actually,
Okay.
what's exciting in the large language model space is multimodal models, where you're combining visual language models now, right? To where you're reducing the inference time of having two different models and combining it into one thing, like the visual language models. So you can see and you can talk, right? So it's kind of like in that same inference. Difficulty levels definitely hard, and it's still kind of early on, but I'm seeing some pretty exciting things right now. I just saw NVIDIA's stack that they've got, and they do have I think they have some real time like video feed where the large language models immediately annotating or almost narrating what it sees. So
that just so happens we wrote a paper on that together, eh?
Yeah.
On our LinkedIn.
Right, it's on our LinkedIn. We insinuated that it's kind of in the future, but it's actually here now, right? Like
it's closer than you think.
It's
closer than you think.
And it's gonna be really. I'm excited to see where Aaron's perspective on this, as like what other combinations beyond just computer vision and language, what other combinations are out there that you think might be critical to either the flight or even in the moon missions, right?
Right. I mean, I think one of the interesting things could also be just when we do send the astronauts up, we may not always get people who do have like geology expertise or meteorology expertise, and so being able to link together I'm holding this rock, what's this thing in the middle of the rock, is going to be useful.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the smartest person. It's the smartest person in a little computer.
Right.
What do you think that would be? Something like we'd have to combine things like calculations, like I don't know, rock inferences. That's not my expertise.
So I think, so like you could do things where you have the colors that you're getting from the cameras that would tie back to minerals or something. And then you'd still wind up using the LLMs in some respects because it's going to do the language processing. It's going to do the, recognize when you ask, what is this?
What is this, right? Exactly.
Right. And have all of those models play together.
That's fascinating.
I think, one of the other important things potentially for some of the AI models in general across all of the solar system missions is also going to be sort of prioritizing what data gets sent back. Not only flagging data that has something that's interesting and an outlier, but then saying, you need to send this data back first. Because we still have issues where missions like New Horizons, when they're out towards Pluto, they can only send 200 bits per second. So just the standard picture from your phone that's 12 megapixels, that would take 40 days to send back. You need to prioritize data.
Well, I want to prioritize Shane having an LLM of who you are. Are you working on that? And I just want Shane to be in space. That has to happen.
The vibe machine. I had a profound thought when you were asking about like Artemis and the spacesuits, and many books have been written about the environment of the 1960s. But one thing contextually I think we forget is that we had a space race or there was a counterbalance to NASA and the Soviet Union. And so I think one of the reasons we were successful on accelerated timelines and our innovation is we had this blind box on the other side, which was we are trying to get to the moon first. That was what was so ambitious when Kennedy announced in 1961 that we had to make it by the end of the decade, because we believed that the Soviet Union would make it before us if we didn't have an ambitious timeline. One of the big failings that I think I see right now in space technology is that while it's good that we all work together, I like that we work with the Japanese and the European Space Agency, and it's a collaborative environment. And even during a wartime with Russia, we are still collaborating with Russian cosmonauts. We have a collaborative environment in space. But I think the loss of competition, to some extent, has limited our ability to innovate in a way that is competitive, because I do think competition does drive this industry in a way that this healthy respect environment maybe doesn't. And I think that we would probably be landing on the moon and doing more on the moon sooner if we were concerned about China getting there first. If we were concerned about, not to say that they don't have a space program, but it's not the same sort of competition it was. And I don't know how we introduce this competitive environment back into space, but I think that that's one of the things we're missing. We have to make this a race again. We have to make it competitive. Otherwise...
Oh, man, I am so on the road of let's unite each other and let's all work together. And you know who would give us that? I don't want to compete with our other people on Earth.
I
but
just
you
want
know
to say,
what? When we get an alien, when we detect an alien, now we have a competition.
Maybe we make it like a little more spirited, like where we have like retired. So we get like JR and then like some old cosmonaut and have like a pay-per-view boxing match, and that's how we get funding.
Jim Riley, our resident astronaut that we all are friends with. I'm going to have Jim on here one time.
Is it possible to kind of create that competitive environment in more of like a controlled scenario, like a hackathon, right? So in that scenario, yes, we are competing, but simultaneously we're competing towards the same goal, right?
It's like bragging rights. Let's compete for bragging rights. Maybe not hurt each other anymore. Maybe we just do bragging rights.
Can we compete for bragging rights instead, right? And I think that personally, I've seen some positive things come out of those kinds of hackathons. And I don't mean like the tiny ones that I've seen so far. They're like, less than a day. You can't really get a lot of innovation there, but it seems like that week to 2 week long hackathons, I've seen, some really interesting things come out of that. I mean, I wish we just hosted a little bit more of that.
I know. I'm going to support you guys in the next one.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing besides competition, I think that unfortunately has really hurt NASA is annual budgets, right? They only get the budget 1 year at a time. That's really hard when you're trying to plan long range. If you're trying to plan for something 5 to 10 years in the future, a 1 year budget is not going to really help you.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. That's a great
Well,
insight.
if we reduce our budgets going to fighting each other, we can have the budget for going into space more, maybe. I don't know. Shane, are you going to miss all this? Are you going to miss the defense industry? And you're always going to do AI.
But... Yeah. I mean, I'm not all the way out. I won't go through the whole entire business plan. So I will still be in the defense contracting business. The long game is that I stay in, but in a manufacturing capability, so it'll be a little bit different. When I think about, it's kind of like the thing you talk about, collaboration in space and being able to create this harmonious environment. We do have some level of competition because the private industry has done this, Rocket Lab and United Launch Alliance, but everybody has their own kind of system they're trying to promote, and they are competing for contracts. And so there is some competition, but I think even if it was like an internal race where, if NASA hosted a competition for who can get the first evaporation ice something system on the moon to make sure that it's possible to have people have liquid water when they need to drink something, right? Mm-hmm. And whoever gets it first gets all the money, right? And so you have ULA. You got to make it so, you only win the IDIQ. It's $1 billion IDIQ, but you have to get there and do it first. And everybody races. And then they get,
That is such a change from the way they've done things, though, is that they've done these ones where you have, 10 10 to 20 people propose, and then you select 5. They do a 1-year demo. You pick who looks promising. You down select some more to like another 2. So you have 2 options in case one messes up, or
how do you get around the small
fail.
businesses? They can't fund doing it up front and doing it on their own dime.
Yeah.
How would they be able to play in that scenario?
A lot stronger bootstraps. We're gonna have to invent some new bootstrap technology.
They did invent some new bootstraps.
All righty. I took so much of your guys' time. I am just so excited. Okay. Oh, let's do our favorite quote. I want to do at the end. What's your favorite quote of the podcast that you can remember? What was the favorite topic, content, whatever?
There's so many topics.
Mine is that Shane is going to sew. I think Shane's sewing. I got to see that. I have to see that.
Shane's sewing the
No,
astronaut.
I mean it's by necessity. I had a lot of I'm a thrash metal punk rock kind of guy, so I have to sew a lot of patches on a lot of denim jackets. Those things don't get on themselves.
They don't get on themselves.
So I double checked, and apparently it is the difference between the plug adapters for the
What
space.
is that? Oh, it's the plug adapters. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
this
just
is
get
like
a
the
new plug
Tesla
adapter.
problem all over again, because Teslas have a different plug than every other electric vehicle. And so this is why there's like 80 million different kinds of electric vehicle chargers out there right now.
Okay. The plug. That's good to know.
So this is why ISO standards exist. Like, you have a defined standard and you
Yes.
stick to it.
Well, I'm just glad to know that NASA's going through the same thing that people who are doing the iPhone thing when they transition from Lightning to USB-C. Like all my cords don't work. I can't charge my phone anymore. I've given up.
I know.
But it's
I'm
like a
doing the
little more
magnetic.
important, I guess, than charging my phone like astronauts in space. Although it does feel pretty debilitating when I can't watch YouTube videos when I'm cooking. I'm sure the astronauts up in space are like, man, I can't come home right now because the plug adapters don't fit. I bet you this is what it's just like when I'm at home watching YouTube videos making fried chicken. It's the same exact feeling when my phone dies.
Same exact feel. I'm so sorry, astronauts.
I think
we are
that
very
is a
sorry.
quote. That's my favorite quote right there. And it's like, I bet the astronauts are feeling that same way.
Okay, well, thank you guys for coming back and helping, and I just like to see you all. I just want to do more of these. You guys might be reoccurring. Okay, thank you so much. I know it's getting late for you all.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again to my special guests on the inaugural podcast, Colin Perron, Shane Morris, Aaron Ryan. So much appreciate it. And all rights reserved to be engaged and listen up for my next podcast. More technologists and advocacy and peace and love in this world. Thank you.